Aaron's, they came from Chico, and they had a house in Buckingham, and he wanted to start a church. But anyway, he was a Gideon, and we went to, he came over to the house so we could ride together to Ukiah where the camp was, the Gideon camp. And he introduced, I introduced my wife. I'm Clarence, and this is my wife, Jeanette. And Aaron says, well, I'm Clarence, and this is Jeanette. And the church has always had that problem ever since. Which ones? Well, anyway, he wanted to start a church, and he was really interested in a church that the kids could go to, and be saved there. And that's worked out fine.
A fond memory is we were part of the first Bible study and became good friends with the Aarons, spent a lot of Friday nights with them. And the church, the Aarons wanted the church to be a Bible preaching church and with direction towards the youth, and I think we've accomplished that.
And I agree that a lot of it was the emphasis on people becoming saved, people becoming grounded in the Lord, and a church that just loved and embraced the children and always stayed true to the Word.
I kept going to the Bible study, and Don Davidson got him to go in there.
Back in 1976, God was calling me, and I didn't know that. I had an emptiness in me like people start out with. I attended church for probably 6-8 months in Lakeport, just searching. Didn't know if it was church I was missing or what. And quit that. And then I got invited to a Bible study out in Buckingham Park at Clarence and Jeanette Aaron's house. And in that Bible study, they were in the book of Revelation. And I didn't know what the book of Genesis was, let alone Revelation. In fact, I didn't even have a Bible. So after 3 months, I quit. I was good at quitting. But God wasn't. He kept calling. And then one day at our concrete business, Jeanette and Clarence Aaron drove in. And she said, honey, she said, we were just thinking about you. We're going to start a church this coming Sunday at the Lions Club building in Kelseyville. We're going to have a pastor, Wayne Scott, from the Free Church in Ukiah come over and give the message. And we just thought you'd like to come, and I said yes. And as they drove out, I shook my head. I remember thinking, why did you say that? Because I've already tried churches. I went the first Sunday. My oldest boy, Danny, was about 4 years old. He had to go with Daddy. And at that service, Pastor Wayne Scott got up and told us about how sin had entered into the world. And to fix that sin, to bridge that gap between God and sin, which he hates, he sent his only begotten Son down here. And he told us about Jesus and the cross, how he had gone to the cross and paid for those sins with his life and with his blood. He covered them. And it felt like he took me to the foot of the cross and had me look up for the first time. And it chokes you up. You know, here I've been searching for almost a year and a half for something I didn't even know. And for the first time, somebody told me about Jesus. I think that's why I talk about the Lord so much in my life to people, because I know there are people out there seeking. We continued at the Lions Club building, and we had potlucks. Our little group of people grew to 30, 35, and eventually we knew we had to call a pastor. So we called Pastor Steve Elliott and his wife Elaine, and their children came. His first church with a great small group, and we all grew together. We all grew together and loved God and one another. We went to I remember a couple of potlucks at the Grange Hall in Findlay. And at these potlucks, we would talk about the future and what we wanted our church to be when we started it. And the main emphasis of those meetings was we wanted to reach the youth of our community. And that's exactly what we're doing today. Yeah.
Maggie?
Well, one of my fondest memories is that we, first met, before we even chartered the church, we met at the Lions Club, as Don said. And oftentimes it was after a Saturday night party, so we would have to clean before we put the chairs out.
Our first memory was the starting of the church at the Lions Club. We would have to go in early morning, clean out the beer cans from the Lions Club's previous night, and get things set up for our Sunday service. And my mom, Violet Hill, invited us to come for the first meeting.
Yes, and I have a memory of Elaine Elliott when I was there, and she always played the piano for us, and she loved it, but she wanted everybody to pray every single week, please pray that somebody comes in that knows how to play the piano, because she didn't want to have to do it all the time.
Ken and I met in an evangelical free church in Fullerton, and when we knew that we were moving to this area, we found out that there was an evangelical free church in Kelseyville. So that was a delight to our ears, because we knew that we were going to be hearing and continuing to hear the word of God preached. We got involved with the church right away. We helped with high school snow trip and ski trips. We got involved with child care in the nursery, toddlers, started teaching Sunday school, which was an interesting experience at the time because we were meeting in the Methodist church, but Sunday school was held at a Happy Day school. So that made it interesting on Sunday mornings, traveling from one location to another. And just meeting great friends. We were new to the community, had some family here, but the friends that were Christian friends that's a very fond memory to us.
I really enjoyed having the opportunity to go to a smaller church where in the beginning a lot of families our same age, and so we would get to go to their homes and kind of not knowing the area. That was a lot of fun to be able to go to different places. And also when we had service on Sunday, I would record the message on a little cassette player, and that was a lot of responsibility for me, so I really enjoyed it.
The first Sunday was to be, my husband said, as we were driving over to Kelseyville, that we could go the first Sunday, but we couldn't commit ourselves to it because it was just too far away. But we were committed all his days, and now I am still committed to Grace Church.
Oh, well, we had church all over. We had church at everybody's house. We even had church for 6 months one time, a Sunday night service at our house. I was in a hospital bed in a body cast. So they brought the Sunday night service over to my house.
One of my fond memories is with children's ministries, and our vacation Bible school was kids camp, and it was geared around the tribes of Israel. And my daughter Christy and I happened to be the tribal leaders for the tribe of Benjamin, which were the littlest ones. And this one particular summer, the theme was centered around defeating the giants in our lives. And towards the end of the week, Pastor Steve, bless his heart, dressed up as a giant. And with his costume, he was probably 15 feet tall, and I'm sure to our little biddies, he seemed 100 feet tall, I don't know. But he was going to visit each tribe, and as he got closer to our tribe, their eyes got bigger and bigger, and they got closer and closer to Christy and I, And pretty soon it was so bad that all 22 of them were crying and climbing our bodies to get as far away from that giant as they could. And poor Pastor Steve was trying to sell, it's me. And we finally had to say, just go away.
This building that we're sitting in today, the property, I remember Clarence Aaron came to us and said that he'd met with Wayne and Sharon Brasher, and they had 20 acres out here, and that's the parcel we're sitting on today. But I also remember going to Clarence and saying, why 20 acres? My vision was small, and Clarence was big. And Clarence was a mature Christian, and he talked with God a lot. I still had to work on that. But he always followed God, and God gave him visions of what we should be doing the whole way.
Yes, we bought all this property, and then we had to sell it because we were moving out of town, right? So we sold it to our partners, and that's why it's divided down into the different sections. And when we came back, we went to the Methodist church where the services were. And then when they built this, we came here, and my husband helped put all the paneling up front. That was kind of a fun project for him. He was a builder. And then we've been here ever since. So.
Well, when I think of starting this church, I think of sitting there on that little hill. I had a chair out there. I don't know who was with me, but watching Clarence Aaron turn the first shovel of dirt.
We had hired a non-Christian contractor to build this metal frame. And he came, and we paid him ahead of time. And we charged at Kelseyville Lumber and FM Frizzell Cement. And he left when the church wasn't finished. And we also found out that he had not paid the bills. So the elders, the wise elders, we met as a congregation, and we all voted to pay the bills again, even though we didn't have it. But we just watched as the Lord, through Steve Elliott, brought this contractor back to at least finish the building. And he not only provided all the money to pay the bills twice, but as Eddie Richardson worked to finish the building, he actually received the Lord. So it was a real blessing.
Mm. Nice.
I'd like to add to that, Jason, what Mickey isn't telling you about Eddie Richardson, is the men's bathroom in the sanctuary, and everybody knows where it is. Outside of that window of the bathroom, there was a ladder leaning up to the roof. And I looked over there, and Mickey was up halfway, 3/4 of the way up the ladder. Eddie Richardson was standing on the roof looking down at her, and both of them were crying. And that's when I found out that he'd received the Lord.
Yeah, I remember when we built this church, when we got it done, and I missed the first service in it. I was in the hospital. But Jeanette Aaron and I were standing out here at this corner, outside. And she and I, we'd had church 3 or 4 Sundays in it. And Jeanette looked at me and she said, "Betty, we'll never fill this building." I said, "No, it's too big a building." Well, here we're a little group of 15 to 30 and build this huge. Now, we saw it when it was just a foundation, and it looked monstrous then. And then when they got the outside on, it still did, for a little group of people. But we were wrong, which we have been a lot of times. But yeah, we just couldn't imagine ever filling this big building.
Softball teams that were a big part of our early church, that actually had church leagues, had basketball teams that played in church tournaments, and that was a big part of the congregation. Everybody showed up. We had big crowds. I also remember, in line with what Nancy was talking about, with the family atmosphere, we had big Thanksgiving feeds at the Grange Hall. I remember being trained by the local butcher, George Hill, in how to carve a turkey and feed the hundreds of people that we had there, all family members.
Rocky and Pastor Jim met at Quail Run, and I guess they got to playing racquetball together. And as they played racquetball, they talked about their churches, and they decided that maybe the two would go together well, and we'd call it a marriage. Jim said he had a big church that needed more people, and Rocky said he needed a church that we could count on being in, and so the two went together, called it Grace.
I think the careful planning of the pastors and the Board of Elders and making sure that everything was agreeable and agreed upon before we attempted to merge. And then when we got here, the fact that we were welcomed with open arms and said, oh, you've got to come here. Bob Hale, he remembered the names of my daughter's children. And that's why she started coming here. And Amos Hayhurst was always making sure we got involved with all the different activities. And Betty Bunch, she kept track, so when somebody was missing several Sundays, they were checked on, just to be sure they were all right.
I remember that when we came here, we were very happy to be in a church that we could meet in as often as we liked, because we were limited before and when we could meet. I remember that people were very welcoming and kind, and lots of good people, and it was neat.
Going back to the Grange Hall in Findlay, we kept that commitment to try to reach the youth of this community. We look at everything that's going on in this church, and the majority of it is leaning toward the youth. And as those young kids bring their parents, and we knew this, that they would, and their grandparents, then we'd have to start teaching them too. And that's how our church started growing. But I just love the fact that Mickey and I were able to be here this total 40 years. It's been a wonderful journey. Yeah.
Well, first I would say that I love and appreciate that the pastors and elders and all the teachers in this church have been so faithful to stay true to the Word.
Yeah.
And because of that faithfulness, I love that on any day we can come to this campus and have people and activities on any time. And I also love that Don and I have had the blessing of watching many young children raised in the church, and now they are bringing their children. So that's just so sweet. And I also love that our church is very caring. And the last few months I have been struggling with my back, and I've lost my mom. And I have received so many cards and hugs, and I know the people were praying, and I just appreciate that about our body.
Opportunities for the youth, young families with their little kids through teenagers and that. Our mom always wanted to have the church that was family-oriented and took care of the young families in the church.
And I appreciate the church, too, that it's grown so much from the small group of people that met originally, and that we still feel like a community of family.
The church now has not varied too much from the original thought of continuing to preach the Word and reach the youth, and I think that's great.
And what I'm excited about was that Clarence and Jeanette definitely had a heart for missions. And so the church has become a church for sending youth out, sending people out, and supporting missions. And the church is such a giving church. It's a very exciting thing about how they give and they support.
I like the programs. I like the fact that I can go
to Sunday school and to church. And I can have different choices in the Sunday schools.
I think my favorite is the work that we do with kids. Rocky started the Awana after we'd been here a little time, and we ran a big Bible school, and the kids just began to come from all over, and it's still growing, still got a lot of kids.
I appreciate our pastors. I appreciate the wonderful way they expound the scriptures. I think of Luke 24, where Jesus walked with the 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus, and the disciples said that their hearts were warmed as they listened to him preach. And I feel our teachers and our pastors here have wonderfully expounded the Word of God, making it clear to us.
I appreciate the fact that this church preaches the Word and also has great programs for adults all the way down to the little ones, with Awana, with Bible studies in the homes, here at the church, and then also our outreach to our high schoolers and junior high through Refuge. At the beginning, when the church was first formed, those that were involved prayed for a church that would always bring in families and children. And that has seemed to been the case for 40 years.
I really enjoy the opportunity we have with the pastoral staff to communicate with them. They're so versatile, and they cover so many different areas, and I think that's really important in our community.
The family concept that we had when we started out, we kind of, because we were growing so fast, we kind of lost track of that feeling for a while. And it's back, and it's growing. I know the whole body isn't always together. In fact, probably pretty rarely. But there's a lot of small groups that aren't necessarily so small anymore, and the family feel is back, and I love that.
And for myself, I remember Clarence and Jeanette, Aaron, thank you. When they started the church, they were big pushers to start the church, and one of their visions was to reach the children of the community. And I think that the church now is fulfilling that vision wonderfully.
I appreciate all the friendships that we've made here and the like. My husband passed away 15 years ago, and my kids said, "Don't you want to come live with us?" Well, they all live in the LA area. I'm going, well, I was down here before. I don't really want to come back down. I enjoy coming and visiting, but this is my home.
Well, if we stay Christ centered, we're going to do it. It'll grow.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to see the church develop into more people, but more mature people in the Lord. And I would say as the pastors, as you, Jason, and Pastor Gary, and Pastor Paul, the elder board, we have a great staff on board, Colette in the office. And as long as we stay in the Word, things are going to happen. Things beyond our belief are going to happen. I would like to see a school here someday. I keep thinking about the fairgrounds. Someday that may fall and they may sell that property and there's a Christian school there. And we don't know what God has for us. But maybe a recovery center too, or something like that. But I know as we grow and as we stay faithful to Him, He'll show us things that we're not even thinking about now.
First of all, I would say that I would just love to see this church grow in numbers. And I'd love to see us outgrow this building and then maybe even build another church or start a sister church, just because we need more people to tell others in our community about the Lord. But another thing I would like to see is that our church remain a church of integrity.
I hope for our Grace Church to keep growing and also continue on with the young families and young kids, and also take care of our seniors too, being them getting in that group. And
Yeah, that's true. And my hope is that anyone walking through the front door will feel very welcome. And I just love seeing the families and young kids, and they're excited to be here.
In the next 40 years, I would hope that the church would stay grounded in the Word and not submit to the ways of the world, which a lot of churches today are doing.
And I would hope that in doing that, we would continue with our programs for the youth and sending and all that. But I think that it would be exciting that to see in 40 years that there would be a depth of prayer, because I know that prayer precedes so many things. And so I think that is a component that I'm actually seeing happen now. But I can imagine 40 years of prayer, what would happen. It would be just amazing for Lake County.
Just that it continues to have good teaching and continues to grow. Now, I realize if it grows too much more, we'll have to have more space.
Well, I would like to see us expand our ministry to single young adults, people who've just gotten out of high school. They've had Awana, they've had Refuge, and all of a sudden they're out of high school and they don't have any connections. And also, I would like to see the church not be a mega church, but have to reach out and have satellite churches.
I want to be sure that we keep our vision, that we stay true to the Lord, and that we reach out into the community, continue to do that. We stress it, and we need to do it, and we're pretty good at it, I think.
I hope it continues in the ministry it has had in wonderfully expounding the Word of God, not only to adults but to children too. I just rejoice in our Sunday school classes, rejoice in our the Awana ministry. I thank God for it, and I pray it will grow here, and that all the churches of Lake County will grow.
Well, from my perspective, I just hope and pray that it continues to be a church that preaches the Word, and that many lives will continue to come to Jesus through all of the activities and the wonderful love that's in this church.
I will look forward to more expansion in areas, facility, and also things like missions that will be much more involved in the world today, because we really need it.
Keep reaching the children and their families of Lake County for the Lord. We can't go wrong if we keep doing that.
I hope that we will continue to have all these young people that are coming to our church, because my son works for David Jeremiah, and there are so many others that work for other people in the Christian atmosphere. And like Christy Reed, they're missionaries, and a lot of the kids that have grown up in this church have gone out to be missionaries or in the service for God. And I'm hoping that young people that are coming here will go into that field for Christ too and serve Him.
The first pastor came from, he was Ephraim from Ukiah, and he came over, sometimes he'd ride his bicycle over, and he would preach here.
When we had the Sunday school at the Lions Club, George's mom had a little RV motorhome, and so she would come out there and park in the parking lot, and the little kids would go climbing up into the motorhome for their Sunday school class. Excited to be there, too.
As a matter of fact, Vi Hill, I remember, had a little motorhome, and that was our nursery out in the parking lot, which worked great. Yeah. But one Sunday I was asked to teach a Sunday school class, and I had only been a Christian maybe 2 months. But anyway, I had one student, and the lesson plan was on the 10 Commandments, and everything was going well until this sweet 8 or 9-year-old boy said to me, "What is adultery?" Now, to this day, I can't remember what I told him, but that sweet 8 or 9-year-old boy was Keith Hill, George and Helen's son, who we are now praying for.
Okay, when they bought the land, Clarence came to me and said that we had just found this 20 acres of property that was, a lot of it was flat. So I come out here with Clarence and I go, "Where's the flat?"
Yeah, Jason, I was explaining that in the sanctuary here, right in the sanctuary room, up from the stage, if you look out to the first row of chairs on the south side, F.M. Frizzell was delivering concrete to pour this foundation and this slab. It was wet, it was raining, and we tried to get our people in charge, whoever was in charge here at our church, to get a pump, to pump this concrete. Well, it was too expensive. So they backed the trucks in, and the second truck that came in here started to sink. And the driver tried to go forward, and when he did, if you know about concrete, there's wire in concrete that they put down. That wire wrapped around the drivers, the back axles of the truck, around the tires. We had to stop, get out the bolt cutters, the wire cutters, cut this truck loose, and then pull him out. Well, then we've got trenches, big, wide, deep trenches, and we had to fill them with concrete. And that's why today we've replaced this carpet. People go, "What are these ripples in this concrete over in this area?" Well, that's where our ready-mix truck sunk, yeah.
My first visit to Evangelical Free Church at the time was on a Sunday when they were meeting in the Lions Club. That's where we met for months until we moved to the Methodist Church, I believe. But the first Sunday we were there, it was immediately following a big shindig at the Lions Club, and there was trash barrels full of trash all over the place. And there were thousands, or it seemed like thousands of flies. And you spent the time listening to Pastor Steve's sermon while you were swatting flies away constantly.
I was always the instigator of everything around here. You know what my nickname is.
Trouble?
Yeah. I've been called trouble since I came to this church.
And how long have you been working with the Gideons?
1970 I started.
Wow, wow.
And
how many Bibles do you figure you've distributed since then?
oh gosh. Gosh, you know, I don't know.
Wow. Probably in the thousands, huh?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
How many Gideons do you think have been involved through Grace Church over the years?
Probably about 15.
About 15 Gideons?
At least, probably.
Wow, wow. You figure you're probably the longest Gideon member from Grace Church?
Yes. Well, probably. I just lived longer.
Yes, yes. Well, Betty Bunch, thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom with us anyway. I mean...
What wisdom?